Welcome to the 143rd episode of Show Me the Crypto. On this week's episode, we chat with David Sneider, who is the co-founder of LITKEY Protocol. Ulf, what were your biggest takeaways from this conversation?
Well, diving into AI agents was a really big takeaway for me, specifically where they're going and how they'll be utilized by different people, by DAOs. We talked about how DAOs can utilize AI agents going forward, and I thought that was super interesting. There was just a few examples that I had never thought of in terms of where AI agents are going and how they'll be utilized into the future. And we did a little discussion near the end as well, just around where AI in general is going. We touched on artificial general intelligence and got David's thoughts on that. And so peering into the future and thinking more about AI as a whole was super interesting for me.
Yeah, I think you're going to want to watch and listen to this entire episode, because we start off in talking a little bit about the entrepreneurial journey that David went through and going through this idea maze of not being sure what is going to work. And basically it was 7 different ideas until they finally landed on LIT and understanding that that could be a big benefit. AI is probably going to be the story of this bull trend. Our guests keep telling us that it's pretty clear in terms of the mass adoption. So having a guest like David who could really dive in was beneficial. And of course, toward the end of this conversation, we have our Bitcoin price prediction. Every guest tells us what Bitcoin will be in 10 years. David was no different. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto.
In a world on the brink of disruption, 2 men will bring you clarity by interviewing some of the most intelligent and influential names in the blockchain world. Welcome to Show Me the Crypto with your hosts, Wade Patterson and Ulf Lonergan.
Well, hi there and welcome to Show Me the Crypto. My name is Wade Patterson.
And I'm Ulf Lonergan.
We're a couple of friends from Canada who love learning about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and we're happy you're along for the ride. Whether you're a crypto virgin or you know your way around the block, we hope our interviews with some of the most intelligent and influential people in the blockchain space help deliver you with value. And on this episode, we're joined by David Sneider, co-founder of LITKEY Protocol. What started as a teenage passion for astronomy led David onto a website called Hacker News, which in turn educated David on the concept of Bitcoin. In 2013, David began building a SaaS company that eventually got acquired by LinkedIn, but he simultaneously kept an eye on developments in the blockchain space. LITKEY Protocol is a key management network for decentralized signing and encryption. David, welcome to Show Me the Crypto.
So great to be here. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, really excited to have you on. And where I want to start is in another episode, another interview you were on, you mentioned that yourself and Chris Cassano spent about 3 years navigating the idea maze, trying to come up with product ideas in search of demand. I'm really curious, what was that process like, navigating the idea maze?
Yeah, I mean, the idea maze is this metaphor from startup lore of basically trying to figure out the right problem to tackle. So for me, that was the era from basically 2018 to conceptualizing LIT in February of 21. And it's a roller coaster. You think you've got the tiger by the tail, so to speak, and this is going to be the thing that you're going to work on for the rest of your life. And then your fundamental assumptions are broken. And so it's a pretty unique time frame for anybody who's been in that or wants to kind of be an entrepreneur, in that it requires holding 2 frames of mind at the same time, which is at the same time being able to have total confidence that you'll figure it out, and the idea that you're working on, you can pitch confidently and continue to explore. And then in the wee hours of the morning, be filled with total doubt, and doubt not in like not in a self-doubt type of way, but doubt about the concepts that you're working on, such that you can turn them over in your mind over and over, talk with them, talk with these concepts about, talk to these concepts, talk to people about these concepts, in order to poke holes in it, where the intention is coming up with something that is really solid, it solves a real problem for people. And there's a lot of lessons to learn over the course of that process. One of the core lessons is best articulated in this book called The Mom Test, which is pretty popular in early stage startups around how to do product discovery. And the general idea with the Mom Test is that if you go to somebody and you say, hey, here's my idea, what do you think? Just like your mom, people are going to be very nice. They're going to say, that's an awesome idea. I can't wait to use it. But they're just being nice to you. They're not actually telling you the truth in most cases. And so really kind of to become a student of the product, the product discovery process is to become a student of the jobs or tasks that people are trying to do, and being able to kind of like go deep into a very specific set of actions or flows that somebody might take in order to say, well, maybe they don't have to do step B and C if this product exists. And then that's kind of how that ideation process, at least for me, worked. And, there's random and chaotic aspects of it too, where we think you've got something, look a little deeper. Oh, this is already an established industry with a bunch of incumbents, or in another direction, like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't going to work. So a lot of bopping and weaving.
Well, that's what I was going to ask is like, how many iterations of like different ideas did you go through? And is it frustrating if you get kind of far down one path and then you realize, oh, shoot, this isn't going to work?
Yeah, definitely. I think we iterated through about 7 different ideas that we like built software around. One of the things that is not in any of the startup books, or at least none that I have read, is that when it comes time to lay an idea to rest, so to speak, that leaving space to kind of grieve that. You have these dreams and what could this be? And it's maybe a little bit like a relationship, right? Where you're thinking about what the future could look like. And then if it comes crashing down, just like, that's obviously not the case, that's not the outcome that you're necessarily looking for in doing that. But just kind of creating space for that to be okay that it sucks, basically, to be in that scenario, such that you can get back on the horse and keep going.
And in that same interview Wade mentioned, you talked about how the idea for a network of nodes to custody private key material sprouted from a hypothesis about NFTs. What was that initial hypothesis?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was the end of 2020. We had set up an NFT marketplace. It was on Polygon. We subsidized all of the fees. It got some traffic. This was right around the era when Facebook changed their name to Meta. So I'll do a callback to the noun Metaverse. And we had a hypothesis about the Metaverse. We were like, well, what if, in a kind of a Ready Player One context, what if the Metaverse lobby is actually your crypto wallet, and the assets that you have in your crypto wallet represent different portals or gateways to experiences? Like, you own the NFT from a brand, and by virtue of owning that NFT, you get to access some content, access some interactivity, really in a general sense. We're like, well, that's a pretty cool thing, unlockable NFTs. Can we make NFTs unlockable? And we worked on that thought for a couple of weeks, and really came down to this fundamental question. Well, if you want an NFT to be unlockable and you want it to conform with the fault-tolerant design principles of Web3, which is to say that, verify, don't trust, don't have a single party in control, the fundamental question was, where do you store the key material? And from there, we were like, well, what if we use a network of nodes to manage this key? And then it was like, that's the thing that we're going to work on. And so that was February of 21, and been building that out ever since then.
I'm hoping to really break down into simple terms what is Lit Protocol and how could its solutions impact the average person. Keeping in mind that with our podcast, we like to create unintimidating content for those who are even pretty new to the space. So what are your thoughts on that, David?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about, for somebody who's using crypto today, they are probably storing their key material in one of 3 places: either in a hardware wallet, like a ledger, the little USB device; on a browser wallet, something like MetaMask, which stores the private key, which is your secret identity, such that you can make changes on the blockchain from your account; or using a custodial provider like Binance or Coinbase. What Lit does is take that key material and rather than storing it in one place, like in those 3 examples that we just talked about, storing it as parts or shares across a distributed network where no single party in that network has control over the key material. A consensus or a threshold consensus of those parties is needed to generate a signature, otherwise known as a transaction in blockchain contexts from that key. And so we can get into the architecture around how we kind of like use threshold keys and use secure hardware. That's the security stack model here. But the fundamental high level idea is that the key can become autonomous because we have engineered a way for developers to write programs that dictate how the distributed key will sign things and will encrypt and decrypt things. And it works autonomously without a central manager through this distributed or thresholdized key that we talked about just a moment ago.
And so who's Lit protocol really built for? I guess more from from a business standpoint or like a target audience standpoint. Who are you trying to get Lit protocol in front of from an attention standpoint so that they can get involved?
Yeah, so developers both at startups, established Web3 companies, and Web2 companies. So I can give you some examples of teams that use this system. So one is Fox Corp. Fox has a product called Verify. They're working on building a open media syndication network. So rather than like media company A having to make a paper contract with media company B to license their article such that a media company B can publish it, doing that on a open network. Now, when I mean open network, I mean like open and public, using something called IPFS underneath to store the data, which is a distributed and fault-tolerant way to store data. And so, because it's in public, it needs to be encrypted. So that's like one of the core use cases of Lit is you can encrypt it to the Lit key ahead of going and uploading it to this distributed key management network. Now, the other use cases on signing, 2 examples I want to mention here. One is called Genius Terminal. And what they have built is what they call a DEX on chain, a centralized exchange on chain. And the way that they use Lit is twofold. First, they use Lit for user wallets in the context of onboarding. So somebody can log in with Apple or Google and not have to save a seed phrase, and their key material is managed in the distributed network. And then they also use the programmable distributed key, which is Lit protocol, to, I'll use a fancy term here, orchestrate liquidity across blockchains. Now, to break that down, that means they have a bunch of wallets that are managing, that have a bunch of USDC in them on Base, on Ethereum, on Solana, on all of the blockchains. And so when somebody says, I want to go from USDC on Base to a meme coin on Solana, the way that it works is that the funds are sent to this orchestration wallet on Base, and the liquidity on Solana is used to buy the meme coin from a decentralized exchange and send it back to the user. And so the user sees something pretty incredible, which is being able to go from the EVM blockchain to a Solana blockchain in like 2 or 3 seconds. And behind the scenes, there's this pretty sophisticated system that the Genius Terminal team has built using the Lit protocol SDK for programmable to program the distributed key.
Super interesting. And I appreciate the use cases. I think that helps to sort of get across what Lit protocol is all about and how it can be used. On the subject of security, more at maybe a general level, we've seen a lot of crypto projects promise privacy and security, but then in the end, they end up getting hacked or compromised. So I'm curious how Lit is approaching security. Obviously, a lot of what you do kind of revolves around security.
Definitely.
So how does Lit do it differently?
Yeah. I think there's 2 ways to get to this. One, a lot of the hacks that you see are teams that managing funds is not their core competency. They kind of like do that as an after effect, and they put one person on it and go, oh, hey, figure out the system. This is all we do is keep key material safe. Like that is the number one design principle that we have pinned on the virtual office wall. And then the way that that is accomplished is with, there's this concept in cybersecurity and in security in general called defense in depth, which essentially is layers of security technologies, whether you're talking about like, a medieval castle with multiple walls would be kind of a physical example of that. And so there's two technologies that are being used. One is called multi-party computation threshold secret schemes, often abbreviated as MPCTSS. And on Twitter and other places, people will just use phrases like MPC or MPC keys to refer to this method, which is dividing the keys up into these parts or shares that we discussed earlier. Now, the issue with threshold keys or MPCTSS, that the T is threshold, is that there's a collusion threat. So if you have 50 parties, they have a distributed key amongst themselves. And let's say you have a threshold that's 30 out of 50. If 30 of the people go, you know what, we want to steal the key material, there's really nothing preventing them from getting together and performing that theft. And so the other piece of technology here is something called a trusted execution environment, which is a type of processor, a secure private processor. This is the type of processor that Google and Amazon use to power their confidential compute offerings. And what we have done is written an operating system software for this specific type of private processor, such that when a node wants to join the network, they need to provide cryptographic proof to all of the other nodes that they are in fact running the proper operating system.
My understanding is that the tech that you're building could have a big impact when we start to think about some of the use cases for AI and AI agents.
Yes.
And so I'm curious, maybe before we get into that specifically, can you just like high level talk a little bit about AI agents? Because I mean, if we go back in the history of AI, ChatGPT launching to the general public only about 2 years ago. And since then, we've seen a huge surge in user adoption. But a lot of people are talking about these AI agents and how they'll be a big part of our world. Can you just, for somebody who's not familiar with that term, can you break that down?
Absolutely. Yeah. So even outside of the context of crypto, we can call like using ChatGPT an AI agent, but I think most people would classify it as like an AI chatbot. What makes an agent different than a chatbot is that it is performing some action, whether it's on the user's behalf or in the context of its own autonomy, being kind of like let free on the internet. This could be things like making crypto transaction, buying data from a proprietary data source, editing your Google Docs, whatever it might be. And so what differentiates like automation as we've seen it to date to an agent, they're really quite similar. The big difference is the use of the large language model, the LLM, as the brain for the automation software.
Gotcha. And then so in terms of moving forward, why Lit will be important in this, because I would imagine, especially when we're talking about crypto transactions, can you kind of explain that tie-in?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're recording this on December 10th. Right now, there are no agents live that are doing autonomous signing, where autonomous is defined as the developer of the agent is locked out of the ability to rug or steal the funds that are in the agent's wallets. Internally, we processed a couple transactions from autonomous agents. I think by the end of the year, we'll really start to see this picked up. We have a bunch of open source product being released on this really soon. And the reason that Lit is a key piece of technology here is it answers a really fundamental question, the one that I kind of alluded to earlier, which is if you have an agent that is doing cryptocurrency transactions on behalf of a user, where do you store the private key for that agent such that the developer of the agent can't steal the funds? And so we, for the past 4 years, have been building this distributed, autonomous, programmable key management system. And so it's really quite a beautiful fit for the agent's on-chain identity to store their key material in Lit.
The whole thought about AI agents going rogue sounds pretty scary. You know, I think if people hear that, they probably get all kinds of things going on in their imagination about just what that means. But I mean, I think you've kind of half answered the question already around how Lit protocol prevents that from happening. But do you think we're going to see a lot of that in the future before it's adopted to prevent these AI agents from doing this? Are we going to have to go through some sort of challenges and a bumpy road to get there?
Almost certainly, yes. Right, like that is the nature of every new technology, that you may have some kind of like, if you're familiar with like the paperclip problem is a thought experiment in the context of thinking about AI. If you make an AI and you say your job is to make paperclips, it consumes the entirety of the matter in the universe to make paperclips, which is to nobody's benefit. And so we may see some weird things that emerge that feel like a weird combination of Ponzi schemes and paperclip bots. But the nature of open software, and one of the reasons that I'm personally so excited about agents, is that they let us build tamper-proof systems, right? Like the benefit is a very humanist one to having that autonomy, being able to say that, no, actually the developer can't get run from this. And we have seen just over the years that the security model of Web2 and Web2 companies is totally compromised. If we go on the dark web right now, we will probably be find passwords, personal identifiable information, credit card numbers for the three of us on this call. And so this notion of autonomy is a solution to the fundamental security issues that we have on the internet today. Now, with that, does some baggage come in around like weird things happening on the internet where people need to use critical thinking before interacting with them? Yes, absolutely. But that's not really too different than how somebody needs to like approach new products with skepticism on the internet today, because whether there is a malicious agent or a malicious human behind something that is nefarious, it really won't be obvious to the end user. Like those will appear the same. But the benefit that we get around building tamper-resistant and tamper-proof systems is a huge leverage point for the world.
In a recent presentation you gave, you said that healthcare was the final boss of Web3.
Yeah.
And you gave an example as well. You were talking about life insurance and the fact Nebula was using the Lit protocol.
Yeah.
So why is healthcare such a challenge? And maybe you could talk about Nebula.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Nebula, they're building a fully on-chain insurance system. I don't even know if we can call it a broker based on how it's defined. I just mentioned that in the context of it's such an entrenched industry. There's significant regulatory capture, and there's a lot of red tape. And so when we see these kind of things that feel more like toys and people are connecting their Google and their Twitter and they're creating a private data store, that data gets very, very useful once health data gets involved. But at least from where I see, there's a lot of things that have nothing to do with building the best technological solution and getting people excited about that solution in order to bring that thing to market. But I also want to digress just a moment to agent control and policies, just to articulate the way that teams building on Lit are setting this up. So you have the mental model. And basically, there's kind of like three layers here. You have the LLM, which is the brain. You have the keys, which do the signing. And then you have the policies, which dictates how the signing will happen. And so the teams that are building autonomous agents with Lit, it's really quite cool what the setup is, whereby they are storing the policies in terms of what are the allowed actions an agent can take. You can only send to this address. You can only spend $1,000 a day. You can only interact with this blockchain, whatever it might be. Those are managed on the blockchain, which means that the full breadth of on-chain governance, whether it's like a multi-sig or a DAO that is doing tokenized voting basically has the ultimate authority around what the agent's capacity is. And this idea that an LLM can hallucinate, somebody could run a malicious LLM and it could say like, send all of the money to the developer creator because they want to steal all the funds. But if that transaction doesn't pass those on-chain policies, that is the manner in which people get protected from these malicious parties, kind of to this point about building that tamper-proof world.
I didn't think about a DAO managing an AI agent, but it's kind of a cool thought, having this decentralized organization of people, casting their vote to apply the next procedure to the AI agent. I think that's super cool. I'm curious on the flip side to what you were just saying. Like, is it possible, and you'd have to be kind of messed up to want to do this, but like you create an AI agent and you use that system to sort of intentionally let set the AI wild, set it to go rogue, and now there is no way to stop it in a sense because there's no access if everybody's sort of intentionally being locked out.
Yeah, I mean, that could happen. You could always let's say they're ultimately, like a really good example of this is the DAO hack with Ethereum early on in the teens, which is to say that like, despite building unstoppable permissionless systems, they still exist in the context of human control. So like, it's kind of hard to speculate around what that would look like, but I think we can look back to the fork of Ethereum basically as evidence that something like that could be reined in, right? Like these things still run on computers that need to be plugged in, basically.
Right. Well, what about the token, the LITKEY? What function does that play within the network, and when can users expect that token to launch?
Yeah, it plans to launch Q1 of next year, and it plays a very similar role to the way that ETH plays a role in Ethereum. The nodes stake it, and developers and users pay for the signing, encryption, and compute services with the token. One thing that we have done that's pretty interesting is built like a pretty sophisticated delegation system. So developers can pay on behalf of their users. So an end user, like in the context of Genius, doesn't need to know that Lit is being used, doesn't need to use the Lit token. They just get to have a really seamless experience. And that for us has been a core design criteria, which is how can we not have any trade-offs for the end users from a UX or user experience perspective while providing the greatest amount of control and autonomy either to that user or to the programmer code that is dictating how their key will sign things.
In terms of this moment in time, it's interesting, right? Like we're pretty clearly in a bull market and there's more and more attention being paid to the space. And as you know, this industry ebbs and flows and it goes both directions.
Yeah.
In terms of from Lit's perspective, does that matter? Like when there's more people paying attention in the space, potentially more users, is that like, do you experience the pain in a bear market, I guess is what I'm asking, versus a bull market, or how does Lit approach that?
I mean, there's two things happening, right? There's like the crypto cycles, with cycle, based on the word cycle, seems like it repeats over and over. And then at the same time, I think the trends that I'm personally more interested are just the march of technological progress. And so certainly there's crypto enthusiasm, it ebbs and flows, it wanes, it doesn't, we saw like, there's some fundamental questions at the heart of each of these bull market runs. What is money online? You could characterize as like the initial bull run around Bitcoin. What is art online? The whole NFT persona. And now we're really just starting to see what the next thing is. I think will be driven by this agent notion. I'm definitely in this camp that by 2026, 2027, the overwhelming majority of on-chain transactions will be conducted via LLM rather than human beings doing button mashing. Like clicking the send button. And so yeah, I don't like, it's impossible to time any market. For us, at every interest startup, we know who we serve. We want to build the best possible product for them. And that is true, independent of the market conditions on any given day.
So is that your thoughts? Because as you mentioned, each bull run has brought about a theme, as NFTs and art online on chain was the last bull run. As for this one, do you think AI is going to be kind of the main narrative that we see?
I do. I think it'll be identity and agents. Yeah, I think, and we're already starting to see that for sure with, the rise of virtuals and the AI meme coins and the agent coins, are, from like a market price perspective, have a ton of enthusiasm behind them. And they're still just so early. And also, like, we can also look outside of crypto to see this. We could see the whole world moving towards this thesis. If you go and watch the keynotes from AWS in terms of what they're bringing to market, like Amazon Web Services, they're bringing forth multi-agent systems. Enterprises all over the world are working on multi-agent systems where you may have 1,000-person company, and rather than putting a specific individual in charge of a department, let's say they have like a $10 million budget or something like that, it's an agent that ultimately controls that budget, and people have various authority in terms of being able to control that agent. So yeah, I think we're really on the cusp of an entirely new world. I think a lot of software businesses are going to absolutely tumble in the next couple of years. Things that seem like really, really well-established incumbents will absolutely be consumed by this new paradigm. Like, we can take the Bloomberg terminal, for example. I think it's $40,000 a seat for the Bloomberg terminal. And what you get access to for like buying and trading stocks in the Bloomberg terminal, it's all public data. It's extremely expensive. And there's absolutely no reason that like there can't be a much cheaper AI-driven alternative. And many people have attempted this over the years, but it kind of feels like the timing is right for that type of thing. And so if we kind of extend this thought and say, well, people are just going to be interfacing with agents rather than websites, there kind of ends up as just like one app, the agent app. And this is a bit hyperbole. Of course, there'll continue to be multiple apps and people have their various walled gardens and things of that nature. But things are getting really, really sophisticated. Like, for example, let's say you want to buy something, you dispatch your agent. It says like, I want to buy a flight to Hawaii. And the way these LLMs are getting so sophisticated, especially around like writing code for websites, one of the speculations I quite like is that in that prompt, you go, oh, I want to book a flight to Hawaii, that in real time, the agent basically builds and renders a website for you. And so you see it, a really beautiful UI, like you're used to seeing on all of your web platforms today, but that was created just in real time, just for you to look through the selection and pick based on the criteria that the agent doesn't know.
I love that. I haven't heard that one yet in terms of like, what we'll see come out of AI. But yeah, that sounds wild. And yet I can totally see it happening in many different similar use cases to that. Just everything being spun up by the AI and just showing you your custom answers or decisions to make through what it's showing you that it just created. So that's super interesting. I wanted to get your thoughts on artificial general intelligence. And we recently heard Sam Altman make some predictions around, that being maybe 2 years away. What are your thoughts on that sort of timeline prediction and just artificial general intelligence in general?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an AI researcher, so it's not in my field, but I read the work that gets put out. The order of magnitude improvement that we have been on with like the OpenAI LLMs and other developments definitely seems to put AGI in the 2027 timeframe. And I also think that there's all kind of wild definitions of this artificial general intelligence, but the one that seems the most sound is that when the LLM can do the two things that currently human beings are doing at companies like Anthropic and OpenAI, which is one, do the research in terms of how to make a better model, And then 2, do the job of the engineers that then implement that research. And so from that perspective of, we just need the LLM to get good enough to make that the next model and implement it. I think that time frame is reasonable. Although earlier this year, we saw some slowdowns. Nature works in mysterious ways. I'm a little bit out of depth in this question. It's not my field, but it sounds right. And also, if we top out with where LLMs are today, we have there's already enough here too, in terms of their capacity and their ability to understand things in the context of semantic vectorized space.
David, this has been a great conversation. Ulf and I like to end every episode of Show Me the Crypto with the same 3 questions we ask every single guest. It's a little segment we call You Had Me at Crypto. Ulf is going to ask you those questions.
You ready for these 3 questions?
So ready.
All right. The first one, who's your favorite person to follow in the crypto space?
Well, the name that immediately comes to mind is my co-founder, Chris Cassano, but that feels like a cop-out. I would say David Phelps from Joke DAO. If he's not been on the show, he would be a great person to have. I don't always agree with everything he says, but he is a first principles thinker, and it definitely gets me thinking.
Nice. The second question, what will the price of Bitcoin be 10 years from now?
$500K.
All right.
How's that place in your?
It's a little bearish. We've
had a lot. We've probably had this probably the second most picked option. It's either $1 million or $500K, or then who knows what else in between.
But time marches on as well, right? So we've been doing this show for 3 or 4 years, and so it's interesting how it's changed. Bull market is usually higher predictions.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be super interesting. Like 10 years, like we're now, flirting with the with quantum computers, and can the Bitcoin development team get it together such that Bitcoin can become quantum resistant in that time frame? Like the 10-year lens is a fun one.
Totally.
All right, the third and final question. What is the most underrated project in the crypto space?
Other than Lit.
Yes, thank you. I would say Emblem Vault. Emblem Vault has done some really, really amazing work. They've been around since 2016, and they, like us, are very focused on not at the same kind of base level of key management, but they have built a really sophisticated product to move assets across blockchains by recognizing that if you can make the key material itself fungible, and we do have a partnership with them, that enables all kinds of crazy wild capacity on chain. And so this whole notion of vaults, if you have your assets in vaults, assets become less bound to a given blockchain. And what I really like about Emblem Vault is, as the years progress and blockchains get faster and faster and faster and faster, people have to worry less about what asset they are running their chain on, because they can vault it and always move it to the fastest, best of breed chain.
I like that. That's the first time we've heard that particular answer, I think, in the 140 some episodes. David, thank you so much for joining Ulf and I on this episode of Show Me the Crypto.
Awesome. Wade, Ulf, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Show Me the Crypto. Please make sure to subscribe, as well as rate and review this podcast.